All right, welcome to another wildly exciting video on cost behavior. In the previous video, we looked at variable costs and the way that they behave. We also looked at fixed costs and the way that fixed costs behave. And then we looked very, very briefly at mixed costs. But we said that we were going to study one other type of cost in our discussion, and so we're about to get to that. Question number 9 here says supervisors at Baldwin Incorporated earn $70,000 per year. Okay, that's their salary. And they can supervise a maximum of 20 employees each. Currently, there are 4 supervisors supervising a total of 76 employees. Okay, so 4 into 76 is 19, so we're good. If the company adds an additional 14 employees, making the new total 90, 76 plus 14, they will have to hire an additional supervisor at a salary of $70,000. That additional $70 is referred to as well, we talked about fixed cost, mixed cost, and variable costs already. So the answer here is going to be a step cost. Now I want you to be careful here because we just need to be careful here because I want you to understand that plant supervisor salaries are considered a fixed cost. Okay? So when we're talking about step cost, okay, we need to understand that there is a relationship between incurring step costs and something called relevant range, or normal range of activity for a business. So here what we're saying is that as long as we have 80 or fewer employees, in other words, 20 employees times 4 supervisors, okay, we have 4 supervisors, our fixed costs are $280,000. Bear with me here. I want to show you something. 4 times 70,000. Equals 280,000. However, now we have 90 employees, and if we try to use 4 supervisors, we come up with an average of 22.5 employees per supervisor. That exceeds our maximum of 20. Okay, so we're going to have to hire another supervisor. So this $70,000. Yes, it is a fixed cost, but it was incurred because we stepped up operations. Okay, so we're going to have $350,000 in supervisor salary. So basically 70,000 times 5. But I want you to understand that yes, the $350,000, the $70,000 each, it is a fixed cost. But that additional $70,000, what we're looking for here is a step cost. Technically, A is correct, okay, but that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to learn with the question. Okay, let's move that out of the way. What is meant by cost behavior? So, looking at these 4 types of cost, when we talk about cost behavior, we could define this any number of ways. But what we're saying is how various types of cost change in total and on a per unit basis with changes in output. Okay, now that's a pretty good answer to that question. So again, but we have to make sure we understand the full puzzle, right? So let's just go up here and borrow from question 9 for a moment and look at fixed cost. Okay, so fixed costs do not change in total when there is a change in output, but they do change when they're on a per unit basis when there's a change in output. So when we have low output, fixed cost per unit is high, and when we have high output, fixed cost per unit is lower. It goes down. We're going to look at a question here in a moment where we can display that and prove that. Okay, mixed costs. Okay, this is a little bit trickier here because mixed costs have both fixed and variable costs. So we said that with variable costs we are dealing with a linear relationship all the way around, right? As output goes up, the variable costs in total will go up, and then the per unit basis, however, per unit basis for a variable cost is the same. So this is kind of the opposite of fixed costs, right? With fixed costs, the total doesn't change, but the per unit, fixed cost per unit does change. And then when we talk about variable costs, I'm jumping down because fixed and variable, those are the two biggies, okay? Variable costs, the total amount changes. But remember what I told you, variable costs are very predictable. So if it's $12 an hour salary or $3 per unit, the per unit amount does not change. Now, in reality, variable costs will change, but for our purposes, they do not. If it's $3 per unit and we have 1 unit, it's $3. If we have 2, it's 6, and so forth. But again, let's say that we have 5 units at $3 a piece. Our variable cost in total is $15, but again, on a per unit basis, it's the same. So that's the exact opposite of what we said for the fixed costs. Now, mixed costs, this is what an economist might call a curvilinear relationship. And how that curve would look on a graph is going to depend, quite honestly, on the proportion of variable and fixed costs within that. Now, I don't want to get into mixed costs too much because we're going to look at something called the high-low method, which is kind of an easy way to separate fixed and variable cost components. So I'm going to leave it at that. And then with step costs, we just looked at the example in step costs, and we said that when we talk about a step cost, we could actually be talking about either a fixed cost or a variable cost. However, in the example that we had, and in many of the examples, a step cost is a change in fixed cost due to when we exceed what we call relevant range or the normal range of operations. Okay, now we could talk about variable costs as it pertains to step costs, but I'm a little bit hesitant to do that. I don't want to confuse you perhaps any more than I already have. All right, so do pay attention. Variable costs, again, linear relationship, change in total with changes in output, but do not change on a per unit basis. Fixed cost will not change in total, but will change on a per unit basis. Inverse relationship. Mixed costs will actually change, and again, we'll look at this later, but they'll actually change both in total and a per per unit basis. That's because they have a fixed and variable cost component to them. And then step costs are only incurred when we exceed a relevant range of activity. Okay. Let's look at one more question and then we'll close this video out. Question 11 says, how is total product cost calculated? Okay. How is total product cost calculated? All right, so question 11 is dealing only with fixed and variable costs. We could have a mixed cost, but because mixed costs include both fixed and variable cost components, we can actually put this equation together without actually looking at mixed cost. Okay, if we had any, they would be embedded in this. Okay, so how do we do it? Well, notice it says, how is total product cost calculated? So when we see that and we consider what we've talked about up here with fixed and variable, we need to know that our fixed costs are going to stand alone, and then we're going to be adding the variable cost component to them. So if we look at this, in answers choices A and C, we are multiplying fixed costs by something, and that is a dead giveaway that those two answer choices are wrong. Okay, so the answer is either going to be B or D. Okay, all right. B is wrong. It starts off just fine, but we have two additions and this is not going to work. So let's just say that we had fixed costs of $50,000. We produced 8,000 units at a cost of $3 a piece. If we did that, we could prove that D was correct, right? We would say fixed costs of $50,000 plus variable cost per unit, and what did I say, 8,000, or I'm sorry, I said $3 for the variable cost, okay, times the number of units, which I said was 8,000, okay, so this comes out to 24,000, and we could come up with our total cost here of being $74,000 in that scenario. Okay? All right, so answer choice D is correct. All right, that's it for this video.